Hi and welcome back to the channel, and many thanks for stopping by, and thanks to all the people that have subscribed to it and all the people that have joined the Facebook group. Welcome to this adventure. Now today I'd like to talk about the idea of regenerating, and we could say rejuvenating, but I prefer regenerating. Now also, another thing that's cropped up as I've been talking more and more about this to people is this concept of anti-aging. Now, I really don't like that phrase, and I'm going to introduce the phrase of enhanced aging, because really when we say we're anti-aging, we're all going to age. Now, if we're anti the very thing that's going to happen by default anyway, how do you think that's going to affect the way that we actually move into that? So from here on in, I'm inviting you to embrace the context and the concept of enhanced aging. So this really means that there's the possibility there that as you grow older, you can grow better, you can grow more agile, you can grow more stronger, you can become more resourceful, you can become more joyful, have a more expansive consciousness, more acute and precise focus, a more robust presence in the world, that you walk the world as if you are welcome here, and that you have a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose in your existence. So this is enhanced aging. Now today, within that context, I'd like to talk about regeneration specifically, and this idea about how we can regenerate our bodies, regenerate our minds, regenerate our sense of being in the world. Now, it's really a story I'd like to relate to you, of a story that involves three men. Now, the first man is an American, the second man is an ancient Greek, and the third man is an Englishman. So it sounds like a pub joke, doesn't it, really? So there's three men. So the first man I'd like to talk about is a scientist, biologist called Michael Levein. Now, Michael Levein's been doing some very kind of strange and interesting experiments, and for many people in the scientific world, he's now seems to be making enormous breakthroughs in the idea or the possibility of regenerative medicine, if you want, is what it's called. You know, the idea basically of our ability to ignite and provoke the process of regeneration. Now, Michael Levein basically takes, he creates all kinds of things. He creates worms with two heads. He grows new legs on frogs. And, you know, just to put a perspective on what he is, so that in his description, he's a biologist and expert in regenerative medicine who studies how cells and tissues communicate with each other to regenerate and repair the body. So, you know, my paper notes here, I'm not very digital on all of this. So fundamentally what, you know, he's saying here, he believes that understanding the body's bioelectric code. So there's a code, you know, he's talking in terms of there's a code, a bioelectric code, electricity. So this thing of electricity comes very much into the picture here, energy, electricity. The electric signals that cells use to communicate is key to unlocking the body's regenerative potential. So in a way, you could say that when we have more electricity available, more energy available, the ability to regenerate becomes greater. So this could come down to the food we eat, the energy practices we do, our breathing techniques, all of these things that we're exploring here. Now, with these kind of ideas of, I'm not a great fan of creating two-headed worms or chopping the legs off of frogs, but it's very interesting that he's come to this point where you can actually regrow like very tangible leg. I mean, a frog, salamanders, for example, if you chop, if they lose a tail, they lose an arm or a leg, they're very capable of growing these things back. It's a huge amount of research into how they do this, and this is one of the things he's looking at. Now, really, the basic point is that he's looking into how to regenerate on creatures or things that wouldn't normally have this intense capacity. Like a frog, if you chop its leg off, doesn't normally grow a leg back. Now, he's exploring this kind of matrix of communication, and he's sort of saying, as my understanding, that there's a cellular communication, and that cellular communication is kind of tapping into the cellular matrix, is tapping into some kind of pattern that is encrypted into nature. So there's something in reality that already has the pattern for what a leg should be like, how to grow a leg, how to grow an arm, how to grow a human being, how to grow a dog or a cat or a mouse. So if we just bear that in mind, then now we're going to move on to the ancient Greek philosopher, which is Plato. Now, Plato had this idea that there was kind of this part of reality that contained these ideal forms of things. And I think he called that, if I'm just going to get this straight. What did he call it? He called it the world of forms and ideas. And I love that, the world of forms and ideas. So there's this non-physical, perfect reality, as he put it. There's a kind of perfect part of reality. This idea of the world of forms and ideas. And this perfect realm of forms and ideas represented the ideal. It was the idealistic state of something. Like a tree, there was an ideal tree, and then an ideal human, an ideal dog or cat. And what we're seeing in our reality, our perception here, is kind of like the stamp of that. That's kind of stamping into our reality, communicating a copy of that ideal form into our reality. Yeah. And it's not like a doppelganger. What tends to happen here is that the copy of it is not the ideal form. It's a representation of the ideal form, which is an interesting way to look at it. So let's just hold that in our minds now. The sun's come out, it's blinding me. And move on to our third person, which is an Englishman called Rupert Sheldrake. And I've met Rupert Sheldrake many times, actually. When we lived in London, in Hampstead, we used to live literally a couple of roads down from Rupert Sheldrake. And he was a really lovely guy. And he's an amazing scientist with incredible ideas. And he's explored all kinds of things and really challenged the scientific established authority. And, he's even talked about, he's got very famous, he's written a book now, I think, I can't remember what it's called now. It's something to do with challenging these axioms of science and how these things like the speed of light are, absolute truths that cannot be challenged. And he's pointed out very correctly, I think now in actually a banned TED talk, for whatever reason it was banned, that the speed of light has actually changed several times over a good many years. So this idea of something being fixed and immutable is not actually true. That reality is much more malleable, much more, it has much greater plasticity to to do things than we're led to believe. Now, the thing about Rupert Sheldrake, he's written a book and developed this theory, and his theory is about morphic resonance. Now, morphic resonance is the idea that there's a collective memory in nature that shapes the behavior of living organisms, and that this memory is transmitted through a process of resonance across time and space. Now, interesting how these, we go back to Michael Levein. Now, Michael Levein doesn't actually sort of give you a deep insight as to where that instructions, we could say, to build something comes from. He's looking at how that instruction, in a sense, is translated into these electrical signals. So he's looking at the electrical communication process of cells. And then he's repeating, he's studying and saying, well, look, this is the pattern, the electrical communication pattern that builds a leg. So if I stimulate that electrical pattern, if I replicate that electrical pattern, then we can regrow a leg. So all of this is really framed around the concept of regenerative medicine and our ability to regenerate things. Now, the other interesting side of Michael Levein, and really all of these people that I've just, the other two people, is the fact that the power, the mind of our minds to actually, in a sense, bring about this process of regeneration. And Michael Levein just really talks about the idea of visualization and the idea of meditation to have a real actual impact on the process of regeneration in human beings. And we have this capacity. Now, he doesn't offer an explanation as to the kind of magic and mystery that is actually going on when we do this. So what I'm suggesting here is that in this process, possibly one of the most powerful tools we have at our disposal is this capacity to visualize, to simulate, and to create a version of ourselves, a kind of ideal version of ourselves, the kind of human being that we would love to grow into, that we would love to evolve into, that we would love to create, to kind of look at this as a whole work of art. So this is where the art side of it, this is where the creativity comes in. So we're able to look at ourselves as a work of art in creation. And when we visualize, when we use our imagination, in a sense, it's possible that we're tapping into these ideal forms. We're able to, in a way, invigorate and invite those ideal patterns or those patterns of that will regenerate us into reality, into being. And the way that I see it is that if you are able to imagine a version of yourself that would ignite your imagination, that would be something that you would love to express in this life, and to have that as a vivid image held in your mind, to have that as something that you literally can refer to and bring to life. And in doing that, you become the enhancement, the process of enhancement. You become a co-creator in that process. And it's something, in a way, that none of these, science can't tell. It's a bit like they say, science gave us one miracle, which is that something arose out of nothing. And then all the other miracles are cancelled out. So we could say that if we look at life in the context of being a miracle, it's very possible through our minds, the power of our minds, to unite with these ideal forms, this ideal principle, this ideal way of putting things together. So we are in a direct communication with that, and we are in a process of evolution using and co-creating with that sense of things. And of course, we're human processes, we're human beings, we're not nouns, we're adjectives. We're always changing, we're never the same, we're always stepping into, we never stand in the same river. We're always changing, evolving, becoming. Now, with this process of age enhancement, enhanced aging, it means that we bring the power of our mind to play to imagine and visualize a version of ourselves that would make us feel like a really exquisite work of art. So we have a heightened, enhanced capacity physically. We have a enhanced capacity to be creative and innovate and see and explore life in a different way, in different ways, different viewpoints, different angles. And then, of course, we have a sense of joy of being. So we feel welcome in this world. We feel powerful. We have a potency in life. So we ripen. We come into our strength and our being as time passes. So we're not anti-aging. We're enhancing aging. We're looking at it and saying we're not willing to accept the stories and the narrative that is given to us by our culture. We're going to break that. We're going to do it in a whole host of different ways. But I invite you to have a listen to Michael Levein. I invite you to look at Rupert Sheldrake. And of course, I invite you to look at Plato as well. And to see how, in a sense, this idea of being able to regenerate things is really played out very powerfully in the mind, the power of the mind, using our mind at its most powerful form to bring about certain changes. Now, in my life, I've used this very effectively. I've healed many, many things, using the power of my mind and also the techniques as well. But in a way, when you're tapping into this idealized form, or this higher sense of blueprint or patterning or structure or instructions, then it guides you to take the kind of actions you need in order to do the things that you really need to do. It guides you to say no to the things that would interfere with that process. So you become an active creator. You are creating with reality. You are part of reality, creating reality. So I invite you to create this sense of who you want to be, the human being that you want to be, physically, emotionally, and visualize that. What does it look like? How does it feel? How does it sound? How does it move through reality? How does it express itself? What gifts is it here to give? What lessons is it here to learn? What do you need in order to live your highest potential? What would it be? How would it look? How would it feel? So the power of our minds to make something happen, to shift atoms, is very real. And when somebody tells us that something isn't possible, like a healing isn't possible, a regenerative process isn't possible, then you can start to refer them to, really preeminent scientists like Michael Levein and the work that he's doing. I mean, he's doing he's starting to work on things now that could fundamentally really change this whole idea of how we age. And the idea that it's not that we want to, I'm not so bothered about having a few wrinkles on my face. What I really want to be is functional and have this sense of aliveness and joy in the process of living as time goes by. And what these people are talking about, and in terms of how we can use our minds to tap into these original, like the original instructions, and bring those to life in our being, is an incredibly powerful thing to explore and play with as we move through this process. So I invite you to do that. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and please share this with other people. The more people we can enroll in this process, the more we can transform this cultural narrative that has such a negative view of time passing and aging. And really, we can create a whole movement and a new possibility for what's going on, and how we can move into a future as human beings that are fully present, fully expressed, and ready to meet life head on as it comes at us, and to create with it, to be more resourceful, to be highly innovative in the way we operate in the world, and to be effective parents, to be effective friends, to be effective to ourselves, our own self-image, our own self-dialogue. So once again, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.